Hey everybody, and welcome to another video on my channel. So in this video, what I thought about doing is doing a crouching animation database series, or at least the motion matching with database setup, and show y'all how to do that, as well as explain like where we get our values from and also the most optimal setup, so that way you don't have a lot of issues, like for example, like sliding across the floor, making sure your pivots work properly, and on like other stuff, right? So let's go ahead and hop right into it. So the first thing that we want to do is we need to go ahead and put our animation databases together. So in this, what we're going to do is within your content folder, we're going to go to characters and then UEFN animations. And as you can see, we have a crouch work in progress. So within here, you can see that we have all the crouch animations given to us. It's just that it hasn't been put together yet. So that's why you'll see in the character blueprint why it's a work in progress, is because there's probably trying to implement other functionality. But then at the same time too, they just didn't have databases set up. So that's why you would see those notices of coming in 5.5, stuff like that. So I'm gonna hop back into animations and we're gonna go into motion matching data. So in here, you pretty much don't want to touch anything as of yet, because we have chooser tables, we have our databases and schemas. However, the default schema is going to be fine for us. And as you can see with the different chooser tables, the pose search databases chooser table pretty much just selects the most optimal or the best chooser table to go off of, and then has a fallback just in case like certain values aren't good. And then we have a database is dense and a database is sparse. We're not gonna do anything with the sparse. We want to put it all into the dense, mainly because of, again, how certain variables and values are being registered for this database. So what we're gonna go ahead and do is let's go ahead and create our databases. So I'm going to go into databases and I'm going to go into dense, because that's where we're going to want to store our databases. However, just to keep it separate for the stuff that's already good to go, I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it crouch WIP for work in progress. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open it up. And we're going to make a few different databases to choose from. So what we need are our idles, we need our loops, we need our stops, we need our pivots, we need our starts. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go back out, and let me see. We have stand, idle, let's see, idles. And then, actually, we'll copy it from our runs and just kind of go at it from that. So if you look through your runs, you have a loops, you have a pivots, you have, let's see, our starts, our stops, and let's just go ahead and grab the stand idle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control C to copy them, and then Control V into here to paste them. Because what we're going to do is we're going to modify them really simply and really quickly, just so that way we can get our animations in there. So off the first one, let's go ahead and we're gonna rename it. So again, we're gonna make it the crouch walk stops. We're gonna make it crouch walk starts, crouch walk pivots, crouch walk loops, and crouch idles. What I also suggest doing too, so if we go back into it, there is one more that we need just because it'll actually help. I believe it's gonna be in the stands, idles. Where is it? Should be in here. Oh, right here, the stand turn in place. So it wasn't idles, it was turn in place. And I'll explain why we also want to copy that and paste it. Because when we go back into the animations, right, and we go to work in progress, if we do break, or I thought it was break, let me see if it's idle, if I could spell right. Idle. Alright, let me see, because we have them in here. Oh, I think I know where they're at. They're not in the crouch, but they are in the idle. So as you can see, we have our breaks, 2, 3, 4, 5, stuff like that. And basically what they're kind of doing here is the, like breaking the idle loop, or at least help with our turns or our turn in places. So that's kind of what I want to lump into there for that. And see how that goes. So let's go ahead and go back into it. And what we're going to do is, let's go ahead and rename these. So the first one is going to be crouch idles. Let me see. Yep, crouch idles. And then this one is going to be the crouch walk loops. Just like that. And then this one is going to be our crouch walk pivots. Yep, just like that. And then we have our crouch run starts. Let's see, just like that. And then we have our stops. Oop. And then lastly, let's do, actually, now that I think about it, I'm going to just go ahead and get rid of this, because even though they are kind of turning places, more or less they're just our heads turning in place while our character still moves. So I'm just going to throw all those breaks into the idles. So let's go ahead and open up all of the different animations that we have, or not the animations, the databases. So open up your idles, open up your walks. Let's see. Oop. There we go, finally loaded. And then our last one. All right, so now we have our idles open, we have our loops, we have our pivots, we have our starts, and we have our stops. And I'm going to show you how we're going to utilize these rather than just throwing everything into a crouch. So I'm going to go ahead and let's open up our content drawer, and we're going to go back to animations. And I'm going to go into the idle first, just so we can get our idle animations. So I'm going to get rid of our idle loop out of here and grab all of the idles here. And there we go. So we have our loop, we have our break. So if I go and look at all of them, you could see how their heads bob or they transition a little bit. So that's why I just decided to not do the turn in place, just because it's still in the same forward facing direction. So go ahead and save that, and we're going to close out of that. Then we're going to go into our walk loops and get rid of all of those. And then in our content drawer, let's go ahead and open that up and go back into crouch, or go out and go into crouch. And we're going to go ahead and get our, let me see, it's going to be our loops. So yeah, let's get our loops and throw them in here. So we should have 12 loops. Save that. And then let's go ahead and close it and then work on our pivots. So here we're going to go ahead and remove loops and search for pivot and grab all of our pivots and throw them into here. And then let's go ahead and save, close that. Let's open up our starts, get rid of everything out of here, go into content drawer, and we're going to look for our start. And we're going to grab all of those and throw them in there. Let me make sure. Yep, we got all our start. And then close that. And lastly, let's work on our stops. So go ahead and close that, and then go back into the drawer, and let's look for our stop. So there's a reason why I'm doing all of these like this, because when we look at the database table, and that's what we're going to look at here in just a moment. So when we look at our database table, I'll show you why we have the different starts, stops, and stuff like that. And it's basically to get more fluidity or better motion matching captures for the crouch animations. So go ahead and open up your content drawer, and let's close the filter and go back into animations, and then do our motion matching data. And then we're going to go into here and choose our dense table. So go ahead and double click that to open that up. So once you're in there, what we want to do now is we want to go ahead and add a new row, and we're going to add a nested chooser. So the reason why we're doing a nested chooser is because of how we have this table layered, or at least how Epic Games provided this table. So here is your first layer of choosing which one of these database choosers you will be doing. So like, you know, as if any of these things match, then we're going to choose this table and then go in and further do it, because They do it like that so that way you're not, you don't have 20 columns of motion matching stuff that it's trying to choose from, and then you have to sort through it and make sure everything's right. No, what they do is, they have one layer of a few things to choose from, and then if these conditions match, then they go into the next layer and then do more stuff or more captures, as you can see, so that way it gets the most appropriate animation. So what we're gonna do now is let's go back here, and on our none, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do the new nested chooser. And what we're going to do is I'm going to call it crouch, let's see, walks, and then I'm going to make a new one, like a new nested chooser, and I'm going to call it crouch idles. And there's a reason why I'm doing that, because what we want to do is we want to follow the same principle as the stand idles and stand walks, and you're going to see why in just a moment. So let's go ahead and open up let's go ahead and modify these. So our gates here are basically chosen, and let me show you where they're chosen from. So I'm going to go into our animation blueprint. So let me go blueprint, sandbox character, ABP. And if you go into the event graph, where all of these are being set is here in the update states function, just like this. So basically at the end of each one is where you could see like, hey, based off of this selection from the character movement component, we'll be doing these things. Or hey, if we're strafing in our character blueprint, then we're doing this. If we're moving in our character component, or at least this is doing a completely different thing, so because this is a pure function. So if our velocity and future velocity are not equal to 0, then we are theoretically moving or technically moving. So we'll get one of these states. And then from our sandbox character blueprint, we choose our gate based on the get desired gate function. So if you're not sure what I mean by that, I do have a video in my GASP from Scratch series where I discuss the get desired gate and how it works by building it from scratch and explaining it. So if you want to see more about that, I'll link it in the video in the description. But other than that, lastly, they have is crouching from the character movement to get whether we're crouching or standing. So that's where we're getting all of these enums for our pose search database. So for both of these, what we're going to do is make sure they're both set to on ground. And we're going to then change the stance to crouching because we are crouching with both of these. Our movement state is going to be set to idle for the idles, and then we're going to be moving with the crouch walks. And then here, our gate for the idles is going to be set to any, and there's a reason why, and I'll explain that in just a bit. And then for our gate walk, we're going to be doing walk. So the reason why we're doing any is because we're trying to copy the stand idles, and if we go into the stand idles, you'll see how they have different parameters in here, where we have stand idles, we have walk stops, run stops, lands light, lands heavy, and turns in place. But these are the primary reasons why I have it set to any, is because we're going to include our stops and our idles in that database search or that nested chooser. So going back into it, what we're going to do now is we're going to then edit this, and inside we're going to add 2 asset rows. From the first asset row, we're going to get the crouch idles, and then in the second one, we're going to get the crouch walk stops. So the first column we're going to do for our crouch idles is going to be an enum column, because we're going to be copying the stand idles and how they do it. So I'm going to go ahead and bind this to gate, because one of them is going to be any for the idles and the other one's going to be walk, because technically we were in a walking state here. This just means that we were coming from just like any state, because we're going like into an idle. So either we could be idle or we can be coming from a different state or like a different gate. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a float range column, and we're going to bind it to the speed 2D, because here what we're trying to do is anywhere between our ground speed of 0 to 20, we're gonna be basically idle. And then for our walk, what we're trying to do is we're trying to come into a stop from our idle. So basically what we're trying to do is ensure that we reach a minimum of 20 units or 20 centimeters per second to ensure that we activate that. And then lastly, we're gonna just set this up to 999 just because it could, that's the maximum we allow it to go to. Because what we're trying to really get here is the minimum to ensure that we do the walk stops. So with that, there's a few other things that we could add in there, but they're unnecessary. But I'm gonna go ahead and add them anyway, just to kind of match up with the stand idles. So we're gonna do 3 Boolean columns. And the first Boolean column is gonna be the just landed light. The second one is going to be just landed heavy, and the last one is going to be should turn in place. And so for both of these, what I'm going to do is we're going to set the landed light to false, the landed heavy to false for both of them, and then the should turn in place, we're going to do false for the idle, and then for the walk stops, we'll have that at any, just like how the idle has the stops in there. So once you have that, go ahead and save it. And then what we're going to do is going to go back into Dents. And what we're going to do here is we are now going to then go into our walks and edit that. So for here, because we already took care of our crouch idle and our crouch stops, that only leaves us with 3 choices. So go ahead and add 3 asset rows to the first column, or the result column. So for here, what we want to grab is we want to grab our walk loops, and then our walk pivots, and then our walk starts. So for this, what we're going to end up doing is we're going to have, I believe, like 7 columns. So let's go ahead and do our first 3 first, however. And what we're going to do is we're going to do 3 Boolean columns first. So our first one is going to be is starting. Our second one is going to be is moving. And then our third one is going to be is pivoting. And they're getting all of these booleans within their ABP sandbox character. I believe if we go to update essential values, it should be in here or somewhere in here. It could be in the trajectory. No, it's not going to be in trajectory. However, I do see speed 2D here, but that means they set it elsewhere. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add a few more. We're going to add 4 more, I believe. So let's go ahead and go here, 3. Let me see, because we would have just traversed, just landed light, landed heavy, and should span transition. So go ahead and on the first bind, do the just traversed, because we're trying to keep it the same as the stand walks. And then the next one should just be just landed light. Then the third one should be just landed heavy. And then the last one should be should span transition. So if we're trying to keep this the same as the walks, what we're going to go ahead and do is for our starts, we're going to set that to true, and then we can leave on any on the loops and pivots. The is moving, what we can do here is we'll just set it to any here, because the starts, it's kind of weird from what I've messed with, where it can be technically starting, or it technically is moving. So we're gonna leave, you could set these to true, but I've learned that if keeping them any kind of helps with this as far as testing goes. Our next one is for pivoting. We want to set our pivots to true, and everything else can be any. And so if we do the just traversed, we can leave all of these at any. And then for the landed heavy, we're gonna do false for all of these, because we're not landing light or landing heavy for our crouching state unless you explicitly set that up somewhere. And then lastly, what we're gonna do is just leave the should spin transition on any, just in case there was any spin transitions involved. So as far as that concerned, guys, we now have our crouch idles and our crouch walks set up. So if we go ahead and save, I'm going to go ahead and save all. One thing I want to note is that earlier when I did this, I did change my input to left control for my crouch, and I made my walk left alt because that's my preference as far as what I want my crouch and walk to be. So go ahead and do that if you haven't done so, but if you prefer the default, that's fine. So now if we go ahead and hit play, if we go into a crouch state, so if I hit left control, let me see why it's not working real quick. I'll be right back. Alright guys, my apologies. I got way too ahead of myself. I thought for some reason that this was on by default and it was the sprint that was disconnected, but no, it was the sprint that was connected and the crouch that was disconnected. So all we have to do here, guys, is go into the CBP sandbox character and go ahead and drag the triggered into the branch to activate it. And so on another note too, just to let y'all know, if y'all see this is crouched, this is pullable by right clicking into the blueprint and getting the is crouched, and it would be this. But however, this is like a read-only value because it's a built-in crouch Boolean function specifically made in C++ that Unreal Engine has provided for us. And what these two bubbles or these two white dots represent is replication, which allows the clients, or at least the servers, to replicate across clients, or at least get like correctly synced crouch data from all of the clients. So this is especially useful in multiplayer if that is your intended goal. So once you have the triggered connected to the branch, go ahead and compile and save. And now once we play, we should be able to get into the crouch. Yep, so just like that, but I don't know why we are not moving. Let me double check something real quick, guys. Alright guys, I'm back and I fixed the problem by debugging it using this debugging testing right here. So what we have to do, it was due to the gate selection that we had on here. For some reason in my mind, I was thinking that it would be fine to have like any and walk here, but technically it doesn't really count that unless you explicitly set it up somewhere here in the update states where you'd have to, kind of continue off of it, where it's like, crouch, stand, is walking, like da-da-da-da-da, if you wanted to specify more. So what you should do is go back into here and just ensure that the gate is set to any for both the idles and the walks. And then another thing that I've noticed too is that if you go into the walks, or not the walks, my apologies, if you go into the idles, set the gate in here to any as well, or you can just straight up remove it, but I set it to any because in the future, in case like I decide to further update this and make it a little bit more advanced to get the proper animations, I would like to have this in here, or copy the stand walks animations. So change the gate in here to any, and then on the top layer, change both the crouches to any. So once you do that, you can go back in to play it, and then you can see that we transition properly between like all the crouches and stuff like that. We get our stops, our idles. As you can see, we move around from our offsets and everything looks good. So as you can see, it now works properly, and there's just maybe some more like minor testing to avoid, like maybe certain sliding, but as you can see, we get more properly properly picked animations for our crouching, rather than just setting it up, simply by doing just a single crouch thing and doing a lot of levels in there. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in and doing the crouch and getting with me and getting the motion matching set up. So if you haven't already, I do have a sprint one out if you want to take a look at that. And also too, another thing before I go, if you ever want to adjust the speed of the crouch animations, go under event tick in the character blueprint, go to update movement, and then calculate max speed peer function. And then this crouch speeds vector is where you will update the speeds. So as you can see, if we look at it, our X is 200, our Y is 175, and our Z is 150. The X in this case is going to be your forward direction speed. So when you're crouch walking forward, you're going to go at 200 centimeters per second. Y is going to be your left and right movement speeds. So you're going to be going 175 if you're strafing left or strafing right. And then the Z is your backward speed, where if you're crouch walking backwards or crouch walk strafing backwards, you're going to do 150 centimeters per second. So if you ever want to adjust the speeds there, so like let's say I throw this up to 500 for the X for some unapparent reason, then when we actually go into it and start crouching, you can see I go at the same distance, or not the same distance, but the same speed as my walking. So other than that, guys, that's a little bit of a tidbit to throw in there in case you wanted to change the speed somehow, some way. But if you want to get more familiar with this, I do have another video that goes over calculating the max speeds and putting that together and why these do the things that they do. So if you're interested, go ahead and tune into that video. But other than that, I'll be leaving links in the description for y'all to check out if y'all want to. So other than that, guys, thank y'all for watching the video. And if y'all did enjoy, please watch my other videos and stuff like that, and watch my future videos to come. So other than that, guys, y'all take care, and I will see y'all later.